Hi, everybody. Ooh.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. I love your background. Oh my God. Your outfit
Thanks.
too. It's
I
great.
thought I'd go a little safari in your honor.
Nice. Very it's really complimentary too, like the green and the pink. That's
Yeah,
that's great.
yeah. It's people are gonna think we planned this now.
I know. Yeah. It's really good.
How are you
Very
doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good. Everybody is on Instagram Live now, so I feel like there have been a lot of delays and technical problems. So if we have any of those, I guess maybe sign out and sign back in.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
we'll see what happens.
that seems to be like how you have to do
Yeah,
anything
yeah,
to fix technology.
yeah. Have you been doing lots of these things
Um,
or the
Not
Zooms?
a ton. No, I've done like a lot of stuff on stories. I'm like planning some like live stream stuff. Like I've done a couple of classes on live stream.
Mhm.
And I'm doing some like virtual classes where I send like a kit to someone and they tell me a time that works for them, and then they either video chat me or I video chat them.
Huh.
And but not with like the raw animals though.
Right. Yeah, I mean, how you probably can't get animals right now very easily.
No, but luckily I have a pretty full freezer of
Okay.
of not food.
Right. You just stocked up on carcasses while
Yeah,
everyone
where
else is buying
everyone
toilet paper.
is like going to Costco and trying to buy like I guess whatever for their freezer. I'm like, well, mine's full of, well, it's a separate freezer, but mine's full of things that I don't think anyone should eat.
um, what's quarantine like where you are? You're in Brooklyn?
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in Flatbush, so my neighborhood's pretty much residential.
Hmm.
So like outside there aren't tons of people. Once in a while, like my actual like next door neighbors are having a party, and I'm so worried because they live with an older lady. They
They're
live with like a
they're still
grandma.
having parties?
Yeah, but it's like not like huge. It's just like everyone who normally hangs out there.
Okay.
So I'm like, I don't care because I'm like, this is New York. There's always going to be noise. Like that's not the
Sure.
part that bothers me at
Right.
all. I'm like, I don't want you guys getting sick. Like you're
Yeah.
my neighbors. Like we know you guys. I don't want you getting sick. Like,
Yeah. They're doing
but
construction right in front of our house, and they're not wearing masks or anything. And I'm like,
yeah, it's
really?
tough. I mean, like I'm pretty introverted, so I'm just like, yeah, I don't mind staying at home and just using this as an excuse to like
Yeah.
work. Um,
What's it like having a house full of taxidermy and being? I mean, does it feel kind of? I mean, I imagine I might go crazy and start. Do you talk to your taxidermy?
no, it
Yeah.
doesn't get like it's not like that. I mean, I also have pets too. I have 3 cats, so they get to talk to me. They're the ones who
How
get
do you?
to like that I'm
Yeah.
seeing running around. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's pretty eerie. It's kind of bright. I mean, the lighting is not as good as I wanted it to be. I usually get more window light right here,
Okay.
but it's usually pretty bright and colorful stuff that I either like make or collect. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not too dark. But then again,
Right.
people will come in and be like, "Oh, it looks like a funeral parlor." I'm like,
That's weird because I do think of your taxidermy, like it seems to me from all the work of yours that I've seen, or most of it, it's very playful. It's not that kind of I mean, if you forgive the pun, it's not that kind of stuffy stuff that you would
yeah,
think would
yeah,
be in like an old gentleman's club to kind of
right, yeah.
intimidate people who walk in the room. It's a much more kind of joyful thing that you do.
I try. I
Yeah, I
try.
mean, you've got the flamingos behind you, and
Yeah, these are actually I'm working on. They're kind of in progress right now, but I was like, I mostly always wear black, so I was like, I'm gonna wear pink today because I don't really want to. That's the other color I like aside from black.
right.
But they're actually replicas.
Oh.
So they're made from real feathers and stuff, but I
Mhm.
sculpted them because getting a real flamingo that's deceased is really tough because they're
Right.
very hardy.
Oh, interesting.
They can live to like in captivity. They can live until they're like I think I heard it was 70 or 75 years old.
Really?
And yeah, and they're even
Huh.
so like the Chilean flamingos, they can they can like in the wild, they will live, you know, they live in kind of cold places in Chile. They can stand in lakes and freeze their legs and just thaw out in the morning. So they go to bed, they go to sleep in these lakes. Their legs
amazing.
freeze up in the water, and they just thaw out in the morning like nothing happened.
That's really weird. And are they? Is it true that they're pink because of the shrimp they eat?
Yeah, they're pink because of what they eat. So yeah, they're really fast. They're really like tough and fascinating. Like they're really hardy birds for how ridiculous they look. You know, they look like these like Dr. Seuss characters, but they're really tough. Yeah.
They're sort of preposterous. Those and pelicans. I was doing obviously here we've got a lot of pelicans in Louisiana, state bird. But I was doing some research for a book I was working on, and I was reading these letters that Union soldiers were writing back to their family when they captured New Orleans. And they were all obsessed with pelicans because these kids from like Massachusetts and Connecticut had never seen a pelican before. And it was like the weirdest thing they'd ever seen. They just couldn't imagine this thing that like swallows fish whole and carries them around in their beak. Like,
to me, pelicans are kind of horrifying, though. Like, I don't like I very much respect them. If there's like a beach I've gone to a couple of times in North Carolina where people like feed pelicans off of the piers, which like shouldn't be doing that. You know, you don't want them to rely on you for food, but seeing them swoop in, I'm like, who thinks this is fun? This is terrifying.
Yeah, they're
gonna take someone's child.
Yeah, I'm curious as to, so I don't know. I know. I've seen a lot of your work. We were on an episode of Oddities together.
Yeah, we were.
You helped Ryan Matthew Cohn make a shrunken head.
Yeah.
Ostensibly for me. And but I don't know very much about like the start, because I mean I wouldn't have known that it was hard to get a flamingo. How do you get a specimen of anything? Like
So I have two jobs. So I have the job where it's my own business, and then I work at a studio that does museum taxidermy. So the museum taxidermy, the museums like, and the clients like nature centers, whichever educational institution, they're usually providing the specimen. And they have collections permits, so they're usually getting it from, like most of the time what they're getting are natural deaths or harvest, you know, things that were like, or not harvest, sorry, it's a special salvage. That's what I was thinking. I was like, not harvest, salvage. They have salvage permits, so they can salvage certain animals that an individual like you or I can't. For my own business, I get pets. So that's part of it. That's part of the way I get animals. Some people will donate their pets to me. Some people want them back. It's mostly birds that I do. And then I also work with zoos and aviaries who will sell me animals that have passed away. So there's a it's really, especially now with everything going on in the world, people talking about wildlife trade and stuff, there is a way to do it that's safe and legal and very much sustainable and ethical, you know, depending on how you feel about death and what should be done with remains. You know, there is a way to do it that is like sustainable and right, but it's, you know, it's also a tough conversation to have right now too.
Well, that's such an interesting question, because I mean, it is, you know, I think of you as an animal lover, but I think there are probably a lot of people who wouldn't think that wouldn't be the first thing they think of when they think of taxidermy. They would think this is a very weird thing to do to an animal.
Yeah, there are people who think that. And I mean, to me, like with any of my pets, so I have 3 cats. I don't think I'd want them, like, for me personally, because I know the process of taxidermy so much, I don't think I'd want them preserved through taxidermy. I'd want to keep something of them, but I think I'd want to keep something of their hair or something of their bones or some sort of, what I really wanted was to get, you know, was to have them cremated and turned into this like giant diamond and just like, make a big necklace, but that's super expensive. So it's like, it's not like, unless like that price comes down, it's not happening anymore.
Is that a service that people do? They will like press ashes into a diamond?
They do, yeah. Wow. There was some controversy with it recently as well, but I think
it must require tons of energy to do that.
Yeah. And there was something happened where I think there was some kind of controversy that was happening with it that, like, I didn't read about it. It was a couple months ago. I forgot the story, but I think people were not getting back what they sent, or there was some sort of
Interesting.
There's just something weird happening with it. But,
Yeah. It is that kind of thing that's like a very weirdly kind of like eccentric rich person thing to do. Like shooting your ashes into space, or like
right.
it's like pretty wasteful, and
it's so wasteful. But
it's a nice idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, you know, I have pets. Like, I love animals. Like, I'm a pretty, when the time is right too, like seasonally, like usually spring and fall, I'm a pretty active volunteer with like the New York City Audubon as well. So
cool.
A lot of the taxidermy and a lot of taxidermists, they do love animals and they love wildlife. But it's just sort of, I guess, a way of showing it that a lot of people aren't used to.
Although
a lot
used
of people
to be
associate with a certain type of person. So.
But it's sort of, I mean, it came out of, I live 2 blocks from the Audubon Cottage here.
Yeah.
And I think that used to be the way, other than, you know, watercolor paintings and that kind of stuff, that was the way people learned about birds that they couldn't see otherwise, right?
Absolutely.
That used to be the standard. Why do you mostly, why are birds your main?
I think because they're so unlike us and they can fly. That's really it. And feathers are amazing. They're just completely unlike us. Their anatomy is very different. And just what they can do. Feathers are so cool. There's such a variety of feathers. There are ones that are, iridescent. I love that. You know, birds look cool as people like us who love beautiful things. Birds are beautiful. Right. There's so much diversity in color. But even like the plain buff brown birds, they're they're so textured. They're gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, since I've moved down here, Sarah and I have started bird watching.
Nice.
It's lovely. I mean, it's really great. I wish I'd done it more up north because there's just as much diversity there as there is here. It's just here we tend to have bigger, weirder seabirds and stuff.
Yeah.
Like what if? So okay, walk me through. If I wanted to get like a roseate spoonbill. That would probably be hard to do, right?
Those are protected here in the U.S. So we can't have those. So you'd probably be able to get a replica one made, but not a real one, unless you.
What about? I guess you're in that picture. You're doing a gray heron or something, right?
That one, and that was a restoration. So that one is for a museum. So it's not for so that's not for like personal. That can't be for personal use. So.
That's interesting. So you must have to deal with fish and wildlife a lot, and regulations.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's following the rules, and it's okay. That's really like I don't have a hard time doing that. Like I'm not, there's like nothing that, there's nothing that I want to. I have no desire to. I'm rebellious in other ways, the kid and stuff, but not in that way. Not in the way of like going to jail for some dead things, you know.
Sure. I had another question about that. I learned while working in fashion that you have to deal with fish and wildlife for things like horn buttons and mother of pearl.
Yeah.
Surprised me.
Even alligators sometimes.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and when I worked in corporate fashion, we would have to deal with the customs and fish and wildlife a little bit. I think it was more with the customs side of it. Importing leather, like importing shoes that are made of leather or snake and all of the, I remember with shoes, there were some things, I don't know if the rule is still there now, but if an upper of a shoe didn't have a certain amount of leather, like different people had to look at it and import it under a different code. So it's.
Yeah, those customs codes are always sort of baffling. These giant, big, thick books of like every single thing imaginable. If it's got a certain percentage of a certain kind of thing in it, it's like a totally different rate.
Yeah.
Those things always drive me nuts.
Yeah.
What do you? You must be familiar with Jeremy Bentham thought that people should be stuffed after they died, and he is stuffed in London.
Yeah.
Have you gone and seen his body?
No, I haven't. I really want to. I've gone on a few trips to London. The first time I went, I was like, I have to go to the Natural History Museum and I have to go to, the Wellcome Collection. And the second time I went to the Last Tuesday Society and to a couple of cemeteries, but I haven't gone to see Jeremy Bentham. He was at the Met for a little while.
Really?
Yeah, I think he was at one of the. It was like a special exhibit. I think it was last year or the year before, and I kept trying to go, but I kept missing it. So I haven't seen him, but I read a good amount about about his remains, and that kids were playing football with them. They had to take them off of a display, and
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, I'm under the impression it doesn't look quite as good as it. That he hasn't aged well since his death.
Yeah, even in the afterlife, I don't think he's aged pretty well.
Right.
I think they have some wax on the outside of it too to kind of plump up what what went away.
Yeah. What do you think of that idea of his, that he thought that, people should have like their dead loved ones on their lawn so you could, walk around and look at them and remember them? It's such a,
Yeah.
I mean, it seems,
I think it's like anything with your loved ones, it's about consent. So I personally wouldn't want that, but if my loved ones did, we'd have to talk about it now before before the event happened and figure out why. So I think it's just personal. I think that if that's what he wanted, then great. I don't think I don't know if that's what I would want, because I'm like, there's so many other uses. I think of the practical side. I'm like, there's so many other uses for whatever part of me is being gotten rid of. Like, can someone use my organs and this and that? Right. But the rest of it, if someone wants to turn it into a wig or a hat, like, go ahead. Just, I would want to be in the same form. I want to be I want to change forms. That's yeah.
I after my sister passed away, I kept some of her hair, quite a lot of her hair. She had long black hair like yours, strong Indian hair. So I kept it because it was something that I loved about her. And I had yet to do anything with it, but I've talked to some people who do hair art, and I think that's kind of nice. I know people do find that sort of stuff morbid, but
no, I think that's beautiful with the hair. That's really that's really the sentiment is there. And with handling remains too, it's so personal. It's between you and that person. So I think if Jeremy Bentham wanted his body, preserved by taxidermy, that's amazing.
It's more dignified than Walt Disney freezing himself or something. That seems like another kind of rich guy's immortality fantasy, rather than the opposite, which is really a reminder of mortality and death.
Yeah, because you're changing in a way. You're changing your form. You're going from live to dead, as opposed to being. I guess from Frozen, you're going from live to dead too. But you're kind of spending resources to maintain this machine and to maintain this state that isn't permanent. So going from one kind of permanent state to another somewhat permanent state, there's a little more. There's a ritual in that too. This is just the freezer. You just turn on the freezer, okay. Whereas with taxidermy or with making some hair art, you have, the process of collecting the remains, collecting those pieces. You're, making something out of it. You're either braiding it, putting it in a case, or having another artist do it and talking to them about it. There are more rituals involved, which I think a death ritual is pretty important.
Well, that's something that is probably, without trying to get to be too much of a bummer here, but right now, one of the big problems with this virus, one of the horrible things about it, is that people are having to die alone. They're not getting their religious rights. They're not getting to see their families. They're
it's awful.
Being stuck in freezer trucks and things like that. So, you're someone who, because of what you do, your art form, you're constantly thinking about death and preservation and things like that. So, sort of, how do you encounter this whole experience that's happening now in terms of the sheer number of people and how it's all unfolding?
It's pretty horrifying, I have to say. I think there's an impression that a lot of people have, is that if you're around death all day, you're kind of numb to it. If anything, it just becomes that much more real because you see it so much. For me, and for for me and for a few people I know, it's almost the opposite. Like, you become so much more sensitive to it because you know how final it is, and you know how big of what that change is that's there, that is just unmovable and unchangeable. So it's taking a pretty big emotional toll. Seeing friends getting sick, seeing friends that have parents that have passed, and things like that. It's just, yeah, it's horrifying and it's awful.
Is your family all okay? Are they still in Florida?
Yeah, my family is okay. My mom is in Abu Dhabi, and my grandparents are in India. So we are so worried about them because they're so stubborn.
Where in India are they?
Near Madras, so the south, or Chennai, which is what it's called now. So that's where they are, and so it's, you know, they are okay to stay inside. You know, they have family there that can bring them food and things like that. But you know, that generation, my grandpa, like, he wears the same pair of shoes every day. He will not change out of those sandals unless he's coming to New York where it's cold. He won't change out of those same sandals. He won't, you know, he won't use a different tote bag. He won't do anything. So when you tell him, like, you can't go to community service, you can't go and do this, you have to stay home and, you know, and not go about your routine. It's not that he doesn't believe the science. To him, he's just so stubborn. So I don't know. It's hard. It's hard telling them from all the way over here. You know, it's not feasible for me to travel over there. My mom is closer, so it's still not feasible for her to travel because we don't want her to get sick. So it's really hard to convince your family there that's not in person. Like, please don't. Just please stay.
I mean, yeah, especially older people. I think a lot of them are kind of like, well, I've made it this far. You know, it's like,
yeah. Oh yeah, that's his.
It's kind of hard to argue with that, unfortunately.
That is totally his. That's been him as long as I can remember. Just super sweet, super stubborn guy. But
I completely lost. I had something else to ask you. I completely forgot what it is now. Do you have any post-quarantine resolutions?
You know, I think I don't have a big deep. I don't have a big deep one. Just because, like, I'm still thinking about that, but it's a lot of little things. You know, before quarantine, I wouldn't cook as much. You know, or I wouldn't make long intentional meals. You know, I wouldn't do that kind of stuff. I would just sort of put things together that aren't going to kill me and eat them to, you know, and make it taste good.
Right.
So
you're utilitarian.
Yeah, utilitarian, but kind of like, you know, but a little fun though. Like, you know, get a good cheese, get a good veggie, get a good, you know, noodle, and put that together. There's something, just not as romantic as what I'm doing now, which is cooking for, you know, spending an hour or two to cook something. So probably post-quarantine when things go back to, well, I don't think they're going to go back to normal, but I also don't think the normal was good. But just taking more time to do things like that, to kind of take care of, you know, do pleasurable stuff with these hours that aren't spent working. You know,
is cooking at all similar to taxidermy? Is there any overlap? In what way?
Everything transforms. You're taking something raw and turning it to something finished. You know, it's sort of, there's transformation by human hands. That's
Well, so in that sense, what art forms does taxidermy most kind of? I mean, sculpture is sort of the one that immediately you assume, but are there other things that kind of other art forms that you borrow from?
I guess a lot.
That it could be analogous to?
Yeah, I think makeup. I watch a lot of makeup tutorials, and a lot of the brushes they use, blending, you know, the way pigments react to each other, and, you know, they're working on skin. Granted, it's different. Their skin is a little more lively than what I'm working on. That, a lot from that. These flamingos, it's a lot of my own past hairdressing experience of dyeing my, you know, bleaching my hair and then dyeing it another color, but knowing how color will act with, you know, with feathers as opposed to hair, but, you know, knowing how to dye things. That's one. Sewing, you know, you're sewing everything, and you have to have nice, smooth, hidden stitches. There's that art form. You know, I guess a little from cooking too, having good knife skills. That's important.
Is your family in India vegetarian?
They are. A lot of them are.
What is their feeling about taxidermy?
I mean, so some of them are freaked out about it. Some of them, my mom hasn't even told them. She's just been like, oh, she just has a weird fashion job. And they're like, okay, I mean, they pretty much know I'm fucking weird. So that's that. But some of them know. Some of them don't know. Like, I do have part of my family that isn't vegetarian, so they are they're the ones that do know. They're more okay with it. But even when I was working in fashion, what I did in the U.S. was a complete mystery to them. They're like, I don't know what you do, but are you okay? are you fine? Like, do you like it there? Are you safe? I was like, yeah, that's it.
Is taxidermy popular at all in India? I imagine probably not.
Well, there was, okay, so during those like awful years, during sort of the golden years of taxidermy, but also awful years for the world and how we treated wildlife, there was a company in India called Van Ingen that was all about tigers and big cats. And they did really, really beautiful work. I mean, again, like, I want to be really careful and clarifying. I don't agree with this time period at all. Like, this time period fucking sucked. It was awful. But they did taxidermy at the time, and what I'm doing now is a lot different. But they, you know, they would do all these tiger mounts, and they were for people that would come in and, you know, coming from all the different colonies and, you know, kill tigers or have tigers hunted as trophies or kill so-called, like, man-eating tigers. So there's like a history of taxidermy being there. And there's this really crazy book called The Maneater of Malgudi. If you haven't read it yet, have you read it?
Is it by Narayan?
I think so. So.
No,
okay.
But I'm reading another one of his novels right now. I'm reading The Financial Expert.
Okay. So in this one, the taxidermist is trying to kill the temple elephant. So it's a really it's a grotesque book, but it's also just like, oh my gosh, like, you can kind of, just from my own experience in visiting places and knowing how hot it gets, how the sun-baked road is, just like the smells of everything going on. I was sort of having this sensory overload reading this and reading about these skins being dried and like smelling on the roof of, like, on a hot summer day with like the salt blood water dripping down. I was like, oh my gosh, this is it's kind of give me goosebumps from knowing all of those smells and just all of those smells being so, you know, prominent in my head. Just big memories in those smells. So
that's amazing. I would imagine that in the Emirates and in Arab places, they would all taxidermy their falcons and stuff. Is that,
I would think so. Yeah, I don't really know a lot about you know, if they, you know, who does the taxidermy there. Like, there are a few accounts I followed on Instagram. I'm like, dude, like, did this falcon? Is this for, you know, some big prince or something? But but yeah, I'm guessing they would. They pamper, you know, they really pamper those birds. Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. Have you ever been to? Have you been there, Abu Dhabi?
Yeah. I went. I went a few years ago. I went when my mom first moved there. So I went then, and of course I was like, we need to go on a falconry trip.
Right. Yeah. My mom worked there for NYU for years.
Yeah.
Did you go to any camel races?
No, I didn't do that. No, I was just all about the birding. I was like, what bird related activity can I do here?
The camel races, they have robot jockeys.
Oh my gosh.
And
how does that work? What do they look like?
Well, so a few funny things about this. They used to use children. They used to, like, tie, like, 5-year-old boys to camels and then, like, whip the camel, and then the louder the kid cried, the faster the camel would go.
Oh no!
Eventually they realized this didn't look good, so
it didn't look good among
they developed,
you know, putting children in a place they really shouldn't be.
They developed these robot jockeys that they put on top of the camels. They're like little boxes, and they've got like a whip arm that the sheikhs drive alongside the camels in their Range Rovers alongside the track, and like press the button to make it whip the camel. But apparently, when they first put the boxes on the camels, they freaked out.
Of course.
They didn't get used to them until they dressed them up like little jockeys. So they've got like little jockey hats and like striped polo, like rugby shirts on and stuff.
Oh my gosh. Are they human shaped or are they just boxes with
I think they're sort of boxes with little hats.
With a hat. That's so bizarre. I think that's really weird. You know, the world is gonna burn down and just that's gonna be left. It's just gonna be the robot jockeys with their stripy box hats.
Yeah. The last living human is going to just find like a robot jockey like half buried in the sand and then resurrect a race of robot jockeys to take back the Arabian Peninsula.
Oh my gosh.
We're writing science fiction here. This is great.
Yeah.
I thought it was weird because I was like, well, why aren't they just racing their Range Rovers?
Right. I don't know, these
Like,
camels running alongside.
I mean,
I'm worried that the camels wouldn't become afraid of those Range Rovers, of those cars.
well, I guess camels aren't all that fast. I mean, they're not as fast as
Okay.
horses or anything. So I guess I don't know. It was weird.
Yeah.
Like so many things. I saw Kanye West live in Abu Dhabi. That was also weird.
That's like something you should definitely do in Abu Dhabi. I think that's the only appropriate way of seeing
My mom was like, I have a ticket to the Formula One opening concert. Do you want to go? It's Kanye West. And I was like, yeah, I want to go. And I was in like a VIP section, so it was me and like a bunch of sheikhs who were not drinking.
Yeah.
You were allowed to have like one beer if you were not local.
Yeah.
It was really strange.
That is so strange. What was he wearing? Which era of Kanye was it?
It was pretty early on. I mean, it was
Okay.
he was big. It was before he married Kim Kardashian though. But I remember he came out and he had like a gauze kind of curtain behind him where you could see that he had a band.
Okay.
You couldn't really actually see them. You just like knew that he had a band. I just like watched it and I was like, wow, he's such an asshole. Like, he's hid his band behind a curtain and then just hid in front of it. So it's like,
yeah.
I was like, well, it must suck to be in Kanye West's band.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I hope that at least they were paid well and
I'm sure
taken care of.
Yeah,
that's
probably.
I'll bet enough. I'll just sit behind a curtain, whatever.
I'll bet the Emirati government took really good care of Kanye's band.
Yeah, I bet. Gosh, it's such a wild world. Like,
it's really strange, and this experience is. I don't know. Do you think this is going to bring people closer together or make people more afraid of each other?
Ooh, I don't know. I think it's going to be 50-50 because I would say, like, in New York, like, as much as people say about here, people are being really friendly to each other. There's sort of, there's tension sometimes with everyone, because our sidewalks aren't 6 feet wide, but, there's tension of like, are you going to go? Am I going to go? What are we going to do? But then, people kind of, I think people here are coming together and sort of finding ways to help each other out. The stories I'm hearing from other places, from friends who are in other places, they're kind of all over the place. There are some places where people don't think that what's happening here in New York is real, that people aren't getting sick and dying and, kind of just suffering at the hands of something we don't know, and that healthcare workers and essential workers who are, they're delivering mail or grocery stores, that they're afraid to go to work, and they're, really on the front lines of this horrific thing that's going on. I think the people who are believing in that, the people who believe that this is going on, I think are coming together.
Well, there's a big disconnect between different classes of people and different regions in terms of like, for us, we're relatively lucky people. We don't have to go outside right now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then, I mean, we're all financially precarious, I think, in terms of our generation and stuff, but we're certainly not, I won't speak for you. I'm not in danger of like being on the street anytime soon.
Yeah. That's like a way that I'm like very fucking fortunate, that's just,
but then, you think about the number of people out there who are going to be, who weren't in poverty before, but who are going to cross that line now.
Yeah.
And that's what makes me sort of worried, because I think that, all these divisions that were there, it seems like that within classes, there's a lot of lovely kumbaya kind of spirit going on. Like, oh, isn't it nice we can all sit around and talk by Zoom and get through this together? But then there's I mean, the shootings are up this past week here in New Orleans, so there's still people in rough neighborhoods fighting it out.
There's a lot of fear and desperation too. I mean, like one thing that's one thing that is up, I feel like, is, I don't know, I haven't looked up if shootings are up, but I know that people have been saying like random things like, bike thefts have been up and stuff like that. But, seeing that, it's also just saying like, there's a lot of fear and a lot of desperation. So it's awful. Like it still makes me so angry that there are people who don't believe that this is happening.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. Or even worse, the people who sort of believe that it's happening, but that it's sort of secondary to other things. It's not as,
Yeah.
it's not as important as, them being able to, I don't know, gas up their car or something. Or,
Right. Yeah. I know. It's like, okay.
yeah.
Or,
what kind of impact do you think this is going to have on your business? I mean, it's do you consider yourself a maker of luxury goods? I mean, you're an artist.
it's, in one way it is the maker of luxury goods, because that is the clients that have commissioned expensive things from me are the reason why I'm not close to poverty. Not that it means that my life is like, I'm not popping my wet every day or anything like that.
We've also got loans and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's like loans and debt, but I'm like, this will at least keep like food, roof, and electricity and water. This will keep like the baseline going. So I think like the luxury goods end of it hasn't really been, like, the clients that are buying those more costly things, that hasn't really been affected as much. Not yet, at least. Right. I don't know. It's still kind of early. Like, I don't know how their industries are going to be affected, if they're working in like tech, or if they're working in, high-end fashion, or, something like that. For the part that I enjoy the most, which is teaching and going to markets and having these like public events, putting on shows, the things that are, that I see a lot of people with, the things that are like, that attract more people, I have no idea where that's going to go. I think the classes are going to have to move online, and the events are, kind of, I'm figuring out how to move certain things onto the internet, but still make it feel engaging. There's that angle of it. Industry-wise, the taxidermy shows that a lot of them take place in the summer in the Northeast, they're all being canceled. So that's kind of, that kind of hurts the learning and educational aspects of it. Yeah. But yeah, I think a lot of artists, a lot of people who make things are just finding different ways to connect to people, and finding different ways to, I guess, make things accessible, but not so accessible that you don't get to pay your bills. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of us who we do have a certain portion of our income does rely on kind of patronage, from other people. I think those people are going to be sitting on their money for a little while. They're going to be more careful with it, even if they have it. Yeah, I don't expect they're not going to be running out and buying custom suits and taxidermy.
Taxidermy, no.
Very soon. They're probably going to wait a while. It'll be probably Christmas before we start seeing.
Yeah, before we start seeing it. Before we start seeing things get back to that that level of normal, or new normal. Who knows?
Right. I'm curious to hear about the classes a bit more. Not only like, first of all, I don't really know what your classes were like before.
Yeah.
And then what they're like subsequently now. Do you mostly do like kit classes where you provide all the materials and that kind of stuff? Is that how it works?
Yeah. So the ones I'm doing now, I just thought of it because I had a couple of snake replicas lying around, one that I painted, and I was like, this would be a way to teach a class without having, without sending a raw specimen in the mail. So I actually have one here. So it's like one of these little snakes that someone would get to make. But I'll send a kit to someone and then video chat them, and they'll, and they'll go back. Whereas before, I would get to hold the specimen, kind of show them face to face how it works, like do a little part for them, and being hands-on and being in front of someone and kind of feeling the texture of something and feeling and seeing the change in the skin, and kind of like, just that tactile sense is not here. So finding a substitute for that is pretty, that's a big change.
And I imagine that would be pretty radically different depending on the kind of animal also that you're doing. I mean, if it was a bird, I think you probably wouldn't be able to do it without showing it up close to someone, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've done a couple of like live streams where I'm just working on something myself and just showing, just as you would probably see in a YouTube video or something like that, but with the difference of being able to ask questions in real time. But I think that's just, now we're all just separated by this ether.
I know, yeah. it is kind of uncanny and weird. What I guess if you're at your most optimistic, what do you think? What are your hopes for the end results? What silver linings might you see?
Oh, I hope, honestly, I hope people just wake the fuck up. Honestly, like that people who are thinking it's not real, people who are like sort of like, well, I don't know about this healthcare, I don't know about that. I'm just like, shut the fuck up, wake up, and listen, we need this. Like, people need healthcare. Just as someone's like poor doesn't mean that they don't deserve basic fucking rights, you know? It's just let's come together across that. I think that's the most optimistic, and I don't live optimistically, unfortunately. I just don't know if people are going to stop being stubborn.
Well, this has, I mean, you'd hope, because this is sort of laid bare how fragile so many of these things are, the things that we take for granted, whether it's healthcare or whether it's the healthcare system, or whether it's, the environment, or, we sort of think people, when things are going great, they're like, oh yeah, this is fine. This is all working. And suddenly nothing's working. Very few things are working.
Just how fragile everything is. I don't think people really realize how fragile it all is. So I hope they do. Hopefully they do realize that.
Is there anything in the way that you think this is going to change your behavior to other people, towards other people, or anything like that? Or
I mean, I think I'm pretty introverted, so not going out for long periods is kind of like, that is kind of like what I am doing. I think on the day-to-day, I'll try and do more things like chat with my friends and catch up more on a routine basis. That's something that is happening now, that a lot of people are, I'm like, we could just still do this when it's not not a pandemic happening.
Absolutely.
Doing that, just valuing my time outdoors more. As much as I love New York City, I love going into the parks and bird watching outside in the parks and going hiking and all of that. But valuing that a lot more.
I'd like to think that I'm never going to let a nice day go to waste again.
Yeah.
From now on, whenever the weather's nice, I'm going straight to the park.
Yeah. I think this is going to make people value, really value the outdoors too. It's made me really value having that time outside, and just
having the sun on your face is like a luxury now.
It is.
Is there any way that, I mean, it's interesting because taxidermy is such a sort of rarefied art. Is there any way that you can that people make taxidermy about things? Like, could you make taxidermy about this pandemic?
Yeah, I think one conversation that is very relevant to taxidermy that's been brought up is, the trade in wildlife. So I think there is a way to make taxidermy about, it clearly is about the trade in wildlife. And I think there's a way to make taxidermy about that, because a lot of what people are upset about are, just poached animals, or animals that are not, animals. We're getting in closer contact with animals, whether it's through poaching, whether it's through illegal markets, whether it's through just shrinking sizes of habitats in the wild. There are not, we think of forests as these big, wonderful, deep places, and they are really shrinking a lot more than we realize. So I think there's a big conversation to be had with taxidermy, and it's, in addressing that issue, and addressing what the future of the trade in wildlife is.
Is there it's interesting, I wouldn't have thought of it, but I guess, are there typically any medical dangers of being a taxidermist? Would you come in contact with, I imagine you have a chance to come in contact with bacteria and viruses and things like that.
Yeah, so the one thing that's not changed about life is the amount I wash my hands and, just wear something on my face. I guess I wear something on my face mostly for dust, as opposed to, the animals I work with aren't going to give me something. I'd have to get really, really close here to need a mask for just animals. But, I think the cleanliness aspect that hasn't changed. But I guess, sorry, I was just kind of zoned off and I was thinking about like my OCD of washing my hands and stuff.
Yeah. No, but that's interesting. I mean, I guess you're already in a line of work where you do. I mean, it was the same with Sarah. You know, she's
Yeah.
a nurse, so she's always washing her hands.
Yeah, but medically dangerous, like, I mean, there are certain animals you can work on that might be rabies vectors. I worked on a bat last year for a museum. So, you know, all the bats are in the US are protected. So it was a mount for the museum. But, you know, it's taking you take the precautions of wearing gloves, keeping that workspace just impeccably clean. And, you know, and not, you know, disposing of the remains in the right way. And sterilizing all of the tools and things like that. But, you know, I think for the most part, taxidermy is able to be done cleanly. It's just the bad stereotypes from the past, and like, you know, and if you just gross things that make it into like media and stories, gives it that bad name. But for the most part, if you're doing it and practicing the right way with gloves and masks and things like that, you're not going to be medically at risk from catching anything from something dead.
Do you have any like specific projects that you are looking forward to when this is over, or anything that got interrupted by this? Or
yeah, I'm looking forward to being able to sell at markets again, because you know, there's the oddities flea market. Those are always so fun. I get to meet so many people. I'm looking forward to going back to, you know, planning events in person with people, like teaching and, you know, putting on taxidermy shows and stuff like that. So that's anything where we're sharing where we're sharing what we love with people.
Are you and Baron Ambrosia, were you working on another pipe?
Yeah, the game dinner. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's like something
let's say for anyone who doesn't know this, our friend Baron Ambrosia, who maybe I will try to interview one of these days.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to explain him to people. He's an explorer and eccentric and wonderful man.
He's the most interesting man alive, aside from Natty.
He's far more interesting. He has this incredible dinner every year where he gets trappers around the tri-state area to get game, wild game, and then he has chefs from the Bronx cook it, and then usually at the end there's a big pipe centerpiece, tobacco pipe centerpiece that he has, for the past several years, been collaborating with you on, making taxidermy pieces and various other things.
Yeah, it's a really
this would be happening like right now, right?
Yeah, it would have been happening. Yeah, it would have been happening right now.
Yeah. Did you have one planned out for this year? We
did, and I won't say what it is because know it's always a big reveal. But it was pretty big, and I'm hoping it still happens. You know, we'll have to see, because it is, you know, we want everyone to be safe and
last year was the one with Eli and Daphne, right? Was that the thing, the pipe that went through their noses and all that kind of stuff?
No, I think that was, gosh, they all like blend together. I think last year there was one with, last year we did one with a bird, I think.
Okay.
Or no. Oh no, last year we did one with I think there was like an octopus or,
before we go, there's one person has a question here. What's your most memorable taxidermy project? You probably get that a lot.
I guess my most memorable, I think right now it's going to be these flamingos, because I have never made, you know, I've only done like small replicas before. So these are pretty memorable in how, you know, and how new and challenging they were. Another one is I worked on a two-headed chick, or a two-headed duckling. And it was actually born with two heads. It wasn't.
Oh wow!
It wasn't a gap. It's. I'm looking at it right there. I can grab it for the camera.
Yeah, let's see.
If our person would want to see. So it's.
Oh wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, so they're born with two heads and two bodies. And this is not the final base. They're just sort of on, you know, a piece of foam until
So they're like, it's a Siamese twin kind of thing.
Yeah, they have two heads, 4 legs, 2 bodies, and
wow.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And it's funny because a lot of you know, this is also something that when I go to markets and stuff, and a lot of people make these gaffs of the two-headed chicks or the two-headed ducks, and they're made as like sort of like a carnival gaff in that really old-timey like Coney Island tradition. It was so exciting working on the real thing. So I was like,
yeah,
this exists in life. It's
that's
incredible.
so cool. Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you must have the most amazing, I don't know, weird day-to-day like existence, getting to see these kind of things and play with.
Yeah. Yeah, it is pretty incredible. You know, some days are more exciting than others, like especially between you know, I get to see a lot of interesting things between doing museum work and historic work and, you know, and the fun stuff I do for my private clients. Yeah, there is no routine, but it's also a routine.
Right. Before we go, can you plug your book?
Oh yeah,
that's the way people can support your art.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a book. I don't have a copy right here in this room right now, unfortunately, but it's called Stuffed Animals: A Modern Guide to Taxidermy, and it's got a little bit of everything about taxidermy. It's got tutorials, recipes for wild game, little history as well, lovely history. And yeah.
Good. Yeah, everyone go buy Stuffed Animals. Order it from a local bookstore if you can.
Yeah, there's this thing called bookshop.org.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. They're becoming sort of the indie competitor to the big Amazon.
I think you pay a few more bucks, but you support a local business instead of Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, yeah. Which is really pretty cool because it has that. Yeah, it has.
It is nice. See, I'm seeing again. I think it's kind of a class thing. It's people who can afford to do a little bit of that.
Yeah.
You know, it's here in New Orleans. Obviously, it's the restaurant and bar industry. Everyone is chipping in to help them. But you know, I mean, we'll see how it all pans out.
I know it's so tough because you hear about restaurants and bars. You hear about like performers. You hear about like. I have a lot of friends who are like drag and burlesque performers. They're all doing online shows, but still, so much of that is so much of that is like in person. You get a different experience, and
absolutely,
a lot of people don't tip on the internet. Like,
yeah. I mean, bartenders is really tough. They've been doing like virtual things where you tip the bartender and they show you how to make a cocktail.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is neat. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you still have to like go out and you still have to have all the.
You still have to have all the stuff. Yeah. And it's not cheap.
No. Well, thanks, Divya. This has been fun.
Awesome. Thank you. It's been fun.
I'm going to post this on my YouTube channel if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
And then people can view it later. And it'll be up for 24 hours now.
Cool.
Thanks for doing this. It's such a pleasure.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure.
I can't wait to see what else you're working on.
Thank you.
And when this is all over, I insist you come down here and go bird watching with us.
I would love to. That would be great.
We just saw a yellow crested night heron the other day.
Nice.
Very cool.
So awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys have some really great birding down there, and you know the home of a lot of fun. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we go to the cottage.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Night. Thanks for being on.
Thank you.
Love to talk to you, dog. Bye.
Great talking to you too. Bye.